Hello and welcome to today's grand incident. Touhou has a lot of fan games that touch on many different genres. As the series has a ton of characters within it, it can be pretty easy to find characters that fit well into particular types of games. Want a hack and slash? Yomu fits well. Maybe a beat 'em up? Suika's pretty good at that. Of course, there's always the tried and true protagonist, Reimu. But if you're looking for a shrine maiden with a little less red, you could always try her mountaintop counterpart, Green Reimu. Back to the point, there's plenty of viable characters to use from multiple genres, and that is a great thing. But every now and then you find a Touhou fan game that's setting is just too perfect for one specific character to not use them. That's what I wanted to talk about today. A Touhou fan game of an interesting genre that could only star Gensokyo's very own bird brain proprietress. The game, known as Touhou Mystia's Izakaya. The game was released on October 1st, 2021 by Gensokyo Dichromatic Propylion, and is a cooking/business simulator game starring the Sparrow yokai, Mystia Lorelai. Now you're probably wondering, why could the game titled Mystia's Izakaya only possibly star the character Mystia Lorelai? I'm glad you asked. Now let me give you the brief rundown. Mystia is a yokai who loves singing, is in a band, and runs her own izakaya that specializes in grilled lamprey and doesn't cook poultry of any kind. Now that you know, let's get into the game. The story begins with Mystia opening her izakaya, and her first customer happens to be Kirby in a kimono. Despite her best efforts, Mystia can't satiate Yuyuko's slightly more abnormal than usual appetite, and Yuyuko ends up trashing the place. Kana shows up, and after a strange conversation, Mystia loses consciousness and wakes up in her bed, as if everything that just happened was only a dream. Mystia steps outside and finds her best friend and bandmate Kasodani Kyoko being harassed by a debt collector. Seems that Kyoko has borrowed money and it's due today. With Kyoko's kneecaps at risk, Mystia jumps in to save her by taking out a loan equal to her debt. Chen obliges and has Mystia sign a contract. Turns out the right to break someone's kneecaps if they can't pay is right there in writing. Now Mystia has 2 weeks to pay back what she borrowed, and her izakaya business is how she intends to pay it back. Now let's get to the gameplay. The game is split into two modes, Gathering mode and Izakaya mode. Let's start with Gathering. As the name implies, you use this time to gather ingredients to be used for your izakaya. You have 8 in-game hours to use, and most actions take increments of 30 minutes to do. Different areas have different ingredients, and some spawns are based on time of day. There are also merchants to buy from, and NPCs to engage with. Some even provide side quests that net rewards. Simply talking to others costs no time, so feel free to say hi whenever you can. There's quite a bit more to this part of the game, but before I can get into that, I'll need to talk about the other mode. Izakaya mode is the main game mode. You serve customers and make money. You'll have some options before opening, but the important one here is choosing your menu and cookware. There's 5 types of cookware, but at the start you can only bring 3. Regular customers will only order off the menu, so make sure you brought the correct equipment. Notice how I said regular customers. Well, there are special customers who can show up throughout the shift, known as rare customers. These are other Touhou characters, with some exceptions of course, and each area has 3 specific ones. These customers will order based on their tastes, and it's up to Mystia to give them a dish that satisfies their request. See, all food have tags, and using additional ingredients in a dish will add more tags onto the final product. Simply hitting the requested tag will work, but if you hit multiple likes on top of that, your customer will activate a spell card. These vary greatly based on character, but they're all beneficial. You can check Mystia's journal to see exactly what they do after you get them. Mystia also makes notes of every customer's likes and dislikes when she learns them, so you can always take a look in case you forget. The last thing to mention is that Mystia likes to sing while she cooks, which is a simple minigame that can activate different buffs for a while. At the end of the day, you'll get EXP and your earnings report. Level goes up pretty naturally just by playing, and it increases tons of things, all of which can be seen in the journal. Man, that was a lot, and trust me, it's far from all of it. There's actually just a bit more regarding Gathering mode now, so bear with me. Serving rare customers at the izakaya will greatly increase their bond gauge. When the gauge fills, you'll be given a side quest that always leads to a new recipe. From here, you'll have to cook the new recipe at the izakaya and serve it to the person who gave it to you. After that, check back in with your new friend to advance to the next rank. The benefits of bond depend on level, and each level except the last will provide this recipe taste test quest. More recipes is an obvious benefit for the izakaya, but some side quests require dishes as well. And Mystia can't use additional ingredients at home, so you'll have to be able to hit the required tags without them. This is most important for Chen's missions, as she provides the means to expand the size of your izakaya in different areas, letting you serve more customers, and most importantly, use all the available cookware. That's the gist of the gameplay. Well, maybe a bit more than the gist, but cut me some slack here. You gather ingredients, make friends, open your izakaya, make money, and repeat. After 2 weeks, you pay Chen, because if you can't, well, hell, you know what happens. After each area, you'll gain a new employee that can help with tasks. And after a few days, you open the next area and start the cycle again. Albeit this time, Chen wants more money. Each area has its own little story and selection of rare characters. So while the core gameplay remains mostly untouched, there's still a nice amount of variance. Speaking of the gameplay, something nice about this game is that it's very accommodating to a casual playthrough. You can skip modes, or even the whole day if you want. As long as you can pay your debt, you're pretty free to play however you want. The game also lets you choose the level of izakaya you want to open, even after unlocking higher ones. Employees can cover different jobs, and checking the journal stops time. So it's a pretty stress-free experience overall, and even more so if you choose to open at a lower level. That's not to say the game has no challenge at all though. Throughout the game, Yomu will show up to test you in a 3-event gauntlet that spices up the way you'll have to play the game. You don't have to beat Yomu's challenge, but it provides a nice tutorial on how the final challenges will go. Now having said all of that, I think this game's strength can also be a weakness. I played both the gathering and izakaya portions to completion throughout the game, and at some point, I had more money on hand than I was borrowing from Chen. I even had days where I earned the entire amount on a single day. There's actually not that much in the game to spend money on, and ingredients are pretty cheap. Once you buy at Renosuke stock, you'll just start drowning in cash. In the izakaya, adding ingredients is very simple. So much so that you can cover just about every tag on a rare customer with only one dish. That's not really a bad thing, but this results in many recipes never getting used in favor of cheap ingredients satisfying the conditions alone. It would be neat if you couldn't do the same dish twice in a row or something, but I digress. Now granted, you can't add stuff to things cooked in Mystia's house, but that opens up a new annoyance in the form of Chen's demands. Like I mentioned earlier, Chen can upgrade your izakaya size for some food and money, and her food request is usually tied to a recipe you get from a character in the area. Here's an example. In the 3rd area, Chen wants a fruity dish. You'll get a recipe meeting this on Tenshi's 3rd bond level, meaning until you reach that point, you have to open with 3 seats and 3 pieces of cookware. Not exactly the end of the world, but being forced to use only 3 out of 5 pieces of equipment limits the amount of orders you can make for increasing your rare customers' bonds. The same issue applies for the normal customers. Some ingredients can't be bought in bulk, one of which is Mystia's signature dish. You can see how many of a dish you can make with your ingredients, and it can often look something like, you can make 20 of these, versus, you can make well over 300 of these. It's not hard to figure out which item you'd want on the menu here. Back to rare customers, they actually have negative spell cards they can use if they become dissatisfied. And honestly, it takes more effort to get these than the positive ones. You basically have to poison your patrons to see these. Not sure if patience has any impact on it, since one of the passives gained through just cooking freezes the patience gauge. I've never once seen someone leave due to this as a result. That's about it for my complaints. I wouldn't say any of these are real deal breakers, but they are aspects of the game I found just a bit annoying. Well, minus the bits on wanting the game to be more difficult. Now that the sour taste is out of my mouth, I'd like to talk more about the parts of the game that I absolutely love, starting with my favorite part, the bonding mechanic. Mystia meets different residents of Gensokyo over the course of the game, and gets to know them better as the bond increases. And these increases come from Mystia trying to help her new friend through the power of cooking. Over the course of the conversations, the characters learn more about each other, and form a real friendship. I love this mechanic not for its application in the game, but for how the characters are written. Mystia is always in character no matter who she's talking to. She doesn't bend who she is to fit the flow of conversation better. Since Mystia is considered a weak yokai, there are a number of characters who don't initially respect her, and watching their opinions change based on Mystia's actions feels pretty genuine. At Bond level 5, Mystia will give out a VIP ticket to her concert, as her dream is to one day put on her own concert, and wishes for her new friend to be there when that dream comes true. With how many different characters appear in the game, it's pretty impressive that none of them feel wrong, and it made me excited to interact with a new set of rare customers in each area, and invite as many people as possible to Mystia's dream concert. So yeah, the writing is easily my favorite part of the game, both story and bonding, but far from the only positive. The art style is gorgeous, and the music is fantastic. Each area has a different aesthetic as well as its own music. However, you can set whatever music you want once you buy it. If I had to say one thing here though, it's that Izakaya level 3 looks the same in every area. While it does look nice, I much prefer the outdoor aesthetic provided by lower levels. I wish that each area's level 3 version were more like Hakugokuro Izakaya, but oh well. I mentioned it earlier, but a positive of this game is that it's a pretty relaxing experience all the way through, but still provides some challenge in different places. Now you could argue that taking it too easy will result in you getting absolutely washed by the final challenges, but honestly, they tend to change up how you should approach the game anyways, so they trip anyone up. It's kinda crazy how many things these challenges change up to create a unique experience, but it's not so ridiculous that it can't be figured out at all. I'm including the DLC in that as well, just so you know. This game currently has 2 DLCs that each add 2 additional areas. New ingredients, recipes, characters, the works. And each DLC has a 3-match gauntlet like Yomu that are definitely difficult. Much more so than the base game. Good thing these are optional, huh? To fully summarize my feelings on the game, it's got gorgeous art and a spectacular OST to go with it. The gameplay loop is fun and has its moments of difficulty, but the greater game is definitely pretty lax. The character writing is incredibly well done, which is quite a feat given the size of the roster, and I'd say it was a big part in keeping me engaged with the game as a whole. Most of my negatives stem from it being a bit too lax in places, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but there are definitely a few things, like being stuck on Izakaya level 1, and a lack of ingredients making so many recipes become nothing more than wasted space after completing the related task, that are much more on the annoying side. Overall, it's a phenomenal game, and it's not even remotely surprising that it's received the enormous amount of praise it has. If you like this sort of game, you'll get a lot of hours out of it gameplay-wise. If you're not sure about the gameplay, but are a fan of Touhou, then I'd still recommend checking it out, as in my personal opinion, the character writing is top-notch, and you just might get sucked into the gameplay loop in the pursuit of the story. Regarding the Circle, Dichromatic Propylion, they are still active to this day. The group has a few other finished games available on Steam, those being Touhou Nil Soul and the Touhou Blooming Chaos games. Currently, they have 2 games in development, Touhou Blooming Soul and Touhou Fairy Knockout, both of which have demos available for them. On top of these, development for the 3rd DLC for Mystia is underway as well. This group has tackled multiple genres, and while I haven't properly played their previous titles, the reception of them is quite positive. I'm looking forward to the release of their current projects, especially DLC 3 for Mystia, as I'll take any excuse to revisit this game that I could get. With all that said, time for the rating. Touhou Mystia's Izakaya is definitely a ranked Chirno of a game. Let me explain why. Everything in the game gets recorded in Mystia's journal when you discover it. So while some characters are on the easier side to guess preferences, it doesn't take very many orders to figure out what they like. Honestly, that's it. In most cases, I'd argue that a large roster of characters and dialogue would require you to know stuff about them ahead of time, but the writing does such a good job fleshing out characters that it acts as a great introduction to them as a whole. I know I sound like a broken record about this point by now, but that just shows how much of a positive this is to me. Simply put, the gameplay stands on its own 2 feet, and the gameplay is full of love towards the Touhou series that fans would appreciate, and newcomers would pick up on and possibly start their dive from as a result. Would you agree or disagree? Let me know what you think. Touhou Mystia's Izakaya is a fantastic game that I confidently believe would stand out even if it wasn't a Touhou fan game. I'm glad it is one though, because the level of quality and love shown towards the series really shines throughout it. Mystia really is the perfect fit for this genre, and it's great to see how much care and effort went into her as a character, instead of throwing her in there simply because she was a good choice. If you're a Touhou fan, then this game is super easy to recommend. And even if you're not, it's still well worth your time. Regardless of your feelings towards Touhou, one thing about this game is pretty damn clear, that this was made by a group who loves the series they're working with. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you during the next incident.